So Kyle Klinsky from Secular Talk did a video last week about a stunning study that was done to keep track of who is being killed by U.S. airstrikes in Afghanistan. I think the year that they were looking at was 2018, and it wasn't, they didn't investigate all of the bombings that, or all of the airstrikes that the U.S. did in Afghanistan in 2018. But the U.S. did over 7,000, I think it was 7,200 airstrikes in Afghanistan in 2018. And this group did in-depth investigation into, I believe it was 10 of the airstrikes, over 100 civilian deaths. And what they found was they did investigative work. They went to these bombings. They talked to the witnesses. They talked to the family members, the people who died. And of course, the overwhelming majority of these people were civilians that were killed. And 60% of the people who were killed by these airstrikes were children. Children. Kids in Afghanistan going about their day being killed by U.S. airstrikes funded by our taxpayer money. In this study, 60% of the time somebody was killed by U.S. airstrikes, it was a child. That is outrageous. And I'm so glad Kyle brought this up because nobody's talking about this. Nobody in independent media, definitely nobody in mainstream media. I haven't seen this in print articles or in print outlets. So this was so huge, and it was buried, and it tells an important story about how indiscriminately we are murdering people overseas, specifically in Afghanistan. And I'm glad he brought this up because for weeks now, I've been meaning to do this video about how it seems that the entire country, all at once, has just completely forgotten about what we learned in those bombshell damning Afghanistan papers that were released just I don't even know if it was last year, just a few months ago, the Afghan papers were released. Actually, I do believe it was December of 2019 that these were released. And in the Afghan papers, it was basically a study done by the U.S. government of hundreds of people who were in leadership positions involved in the Afghanistan war over a decade. We've been in Afghanistan since 2001. And so the Afghanistan papers were leaked documents from this internal investigation that the U.S. government was doing into what has gone on in Afghanistan and how much of an utter debacle the war has been since it started. And we learned that all of these, everyone in leadership involved in this war has been lying to the American public. That, and it's not up for debate. It's not up for interpretation. In their own words, they admit that they've been lying to the public. They admit they explicitly say the story that they've been telling to the American people, and you see the conversations that they're having behind closed doors about the fucking mayhem and bedlam that they've unleashed in Afghanistan with this aimless war that they have going on. They talk about how they don't even know who the enemy is in Afghanistan. We are dropping, and we have been dropping hundreds of bombs. We've been dropping thousands of bombs on these people every single year for 17 years. And the people who we've put in charge of this war, the generals, the commanders, the people at the State Department, the White House, Congress, they all admit they have no idea who the fuck they're dropping bombs on. Again, another bombshell indictment, and it's incredibly serious war crimes we're talking about here. Indiscriminate bombing of civilians. And they just admit this in their own words. We learned that they are intentionally underreporting the civilian casualties. They're doing it. They said it in their own words that they are deliberately undercounting the people that we massacre in Afghanistan, and you can extrapolate this, as well as all the other stuff we learned about in the Afghanistan papers, you can extrapolate this to all the other wars that we're involved in. The 8+ other wars we're involved in around the world. Deliberately, intentionally misleading the public by under-reporting the amount of deaths, because if people knew just how genocidal we were, maybe they would have a different view of the U.S. military and the U.S. government, and maybe they would actually want to prosecute some of these brazen war criminals that we have in our government. So they lie about the civilian, how many civilians were killed. They also admitted that this is just a giant fucking money pit. Over $1 trillion wasted. Have no idea what they're overspending money on unnecessary shit. Can of Coke. The U.S. military would spend $10 on a can of Coke or some crazy shit like that. Of course, you have the insane blank checks that we were giving to defense contractors to do all types of crazy shit in Afghanistan. So it was a money pit. In their own words, nobody knows exactly how much money they spent in Afghanistan, but it's upwards of $1 trillion. Just set it on fire for no reason, for a goal that has no end, that has no war. We learn all of this, and understandably, a lot of shit has gone on in the last few months. So if the media, if people are a little distracted by the coronavirus, and the protests and the uprising across the country, the economic depression we're living in. Okay, the lawlessness of the police, the mask off. We're seeing how really out of control the police departments are. Entire police departments and precincts are across the country. Understandable. There's a lot of shit going on. But when we learn that our government has lied us into and lied about a war to continue it for 17 years, an endless war, and we learn about all the destruction that they've caused in their own words, the war crimes, the indifference to human life, that should stir up some type of fire in people, and there should have been protests similar to what we're seeing right now in the streets when these Afghanistan papers came out, because doing this is the people involved in this, the people who perpetrated this for 17 years and want to continue this till the end of time. These are some of the worst human beings you could come across on this planet. That includes Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld, Condoleezza Rice, Obama, Joe Biden. I'm gonna get to that in a minute. Everybody in the Obama administration, that includes Trump. All of them. This is some of the worst and most heinous shit you can do to other human beings on this planet. Indiscriminately murder them, occupy their country, steal their resources, completely destroy their infrastructure, and cripple the country for no reason other than the profits of the military-industrial complex. This is some of the most immoral shit you can do on this planet as a human being. And we have just become indifferent to it. We do not care. I don't want to say we don't care, but it does not stir up the necessary outrage and righteous indignation that it deserves. Because I cannot adequately put into words how insane this is, that what we learned in the Afghanistan papers. And again, nobody's talking about it anymore. It was just a blip on the radar. Now it has been swept aside, and there's been no action taken. Everybody has acted like we didn't just learn these things. And of course, people like myself, the anti-war activists, anti-war movement, people in the anti-war movement in this country, the non-interventionists, we've known this. We've been following this shit, and it's been clear that this is what's been going on this entire time. But to hear this come from the words of the people in government who are in charge of this war, what that means is, okay, so there's no debate now. We all know that this is just war crimes galore, and everybody involved in this are wanton war criminals, and now we should be having a conversation about ending the war immediately and prosecuting these people. That's what should have happened immediately after we learned what we learned in the Afghanistan papers. But nothing. There has been no congressional investigation into this. Not in the House, not in the Democratic-controlled House, not in the Senate. No congressional investigations into anything we learned in the Afghan papers. You want to talk about an impeachable offense? Donald Trump has been lying and perpetrating this war. He too is indiscriminately murdering people is civilians in Afghanistan. In fact, when he came in, he dropped more in his first year in office. He dropped more bombs in Afghanistan than have been dropped in the entire duration of the war since it started in 2016. So you want to talk about impeachable offenses? Donald Trump, as soon as those Afghan papers came out, and we learned exactly how the White House has been involved in the cover-up of what's going on in the war, that should have immediately led to the impeachment of Donald Trump. But it didn't, because nobody cares. And it leads me to the last point I want to make. This is just one of an endless list of things that the Democratic Party, specifically, and the point I'm trying to make right here, that Joe Biden has done and perpetrated on this country and the people around the world that is just entirely indefensible, inexcusable, and makes it impossible for someone like me to support this man or to vote for this man to be president so that he can get licensed to do this shit and to do even worse. Because Joe Biden, of all people in politics, Joe Biden has had his hands all on this Afghanistan war arguably more than anybody. More than the neocons in the Bush administration or in the Bush White House who helped start it. Because Joe Biden was right there in the chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and he helped greenlight this war in Afghanistan. So he was there at the start. And then, of course, he's in the Senate while it's going on up until 2009 when he comes into the White House as vice president. And as vice president, Barack Obama largely handed over control of what happened in Afghanistan and Iraq to Joe Biden. So he was continuing to lie to the American public. He was continuing to greenlight the massacre, the genocide of civilians in Afghanistan, all throughout Obama's time in the White House. And here we are in 2020. Joe Biden's coming back around for my vote. And now everybody's going to try to shame me into voting for Joe Biden because, Trump's so bad. He's so dangerous. He's a menace to society. Look at him. Oh, yeah, that's true about Trump. He's dangerous as shit, and he's a menace to society. All that's true. But Joe Biden is presided over wanton destruction of a society and genocide. That, like I said, that is the worst thing that a human being can do to another human being on this planet. So what that tells me is there is no red line for Joe Biden. There is no line that he won't cross to please his donors, to please the military-industrial complex. He will do anything, including and not limited to the genocide of innocent civilians, innocent men and women in Afghanistan. And if he's willing to do that, there's nothing that he won't do. So again, Trump's real bad and he's doing a lot of crazy shit, but that's not incentive enough for me to vote for Joe Biden because Joe Biden has shown that he has no red lines and there's nothing that he won't do. So it's not like I can't expect this level of injustice in America or that this is new to me. But it's hard to put into words the confusion and outrage that is going on inside of me right now, as it seems that everybody just completely forgot and is going to sweep under the rug the fact that we're just doing wanton genocide and everyone involved knows it, but nobody's going to do anything to stop it and nobody's going to do anything to hold these people accountable. It's fucking crazy.